Welcome to the DL Jones Book Show. I'm your host, DL Jones, and this episode we're going to be talking about episode 2 of the new Disney Plus show WandaVision. In this episode, we're going to be probably seeing a little bit more, a few more things will be unveiled in this episode than were in the last episode, and we're going to get into that in a few seconds. But before we get to that, make sure you look down and hit that subscribe button. That really helps out the channel. And click the like button while you're at it. And make sure you click the bell so that you can get notifications when new videos show up. As a reminder, this recap that I'm going to do will have spoilers for episode 2 of the WandaVision show. So if you don't want to hear about any spoilers, you might want to hold off on watching this video until you've watched the episode. Just a warning, this episode will have spoilers because I will be going through the whole episode 2 of WandaVision. Just wanted to give this quick warning before we get started. Okay, right off the bat, this episode starts differently than the last episode. It starts with like a cold open. You have Wanda and Vision, they're laying in bed, and of course it's still in black and white, sort of like episode 1. And they're in the bedroom, and they have like an old school looking bed set up where they got the 2 little small beds, and they're placed like away from each other. And all of a sudden they hear this loud noise. It's like a boom or a knocking sound outside. And the noise kind of wakes Wanda up. She sits up and she looks around. And then she hears the noise again, and she kind of uses her powers to turn the light on. Then it gets quiet for a couple of seconds, and she uses her powers to turn it off. And then after a second, the knocking happened again. She turns it on again. Vision looks at her and asks her, is she using her powers? He's like, are you using your powers to turn the lights on? And she's like, yes. She hears a noise. And then they hear the noise for a little while longer, and Vision eventually gets up, turns on the light himself, and he goes and looks outside the window. So he look out the window for a little while, and he don't see anything. He looks at her and he, tells her he don't see anything. So while Vision is trying to convince Wanda that everything's good, he doesn't hear anything. The noise happens again. This time it startles him, and he runs and he jumps in the bed. He's acting like he's really scared. He pulls the cover over his head. Wanda kind of gives him like a weird look, like I told you so, It's quiet for a few seconds, and then they have like a small conversation about Vision is talking about rumors he has heard at work, talking about they're saying that there's unsavory characters in the neighborhood. Then Wanda look at him and like, you mean unsavory characters like people who can go through walls and people who can make a pencil fly? Pretty much pointing out that they may be the unsavory characters that he's hearing the rumors about, that's who the people are talking about. So while they're having their conversation, they hear the noise again. This time Wanda gets scared and she kind of waggles her fingers and she slides the 2 beds together. So now the beds are, side by side, right up next to each other. They're looking at each other and they're kind of going back and forth on what they should do. And finally Wanda's like, I'll find out who it is. And she waves her fingers and the curtains fly open. And then when the curtains fly open, you see that there's like a tree branch outside the window that's just kind of shaking, like it's blowing in the wind and is banging on the window. And they kind of like look at it like, okay, that was what the noise was. And they kind of look at each other and they feel, comfortable that they found out what the noise was. After they do that, Vision kind of compliments Wanda on the room redecoration, talking about how the beds are now together and not apart. And Wanda like kind of took it a step further. She waved her finger and she turned the 2 small beds into a larger bed. And then Vision, of course, he says a few flirt words, flirt with her for a little bit, like in a 50s sitcom style. And then, of course, they pick up the cover and they cut the lights out and pull the covers over their head. And, you can assume what happens next, which they don't show it. And I was going to leave that part out of this because I didn't think it made any difference. But then when I got to the end of the episode, I was like, okay, so this may be something that should be noted at the beginning. So now we go to what is probably the real intro, the real opening of the show. That first section was sort of like a cold opening. And then we went to the real opening of the show with the music and stuff. But this time it was animated. It was like a cartoon. And it starts off with, it kind of reminds me of like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, of like how those shows started with the cartoon montage and the music playing at the beginning of every episode. That's how this did. It had had a little section of that. You had different characters from the episode appearing on the screen. You know, some characters that was in episode 1, then some characters that ended up being in episode 2 that we haven't seen yet. That, you know, they can't, the cartoons kind of go through to all of those different characters, and then you see the title screen and everything. So then after that intro, we're back in the living room. We're back in the living room of the house. Of course, it looks completely different from the first episode. I think it's the same house, but it's different furniture and different decorations and stuff like that. Vision, it starts off with Vision. He has on like a magician outfit. He got a, you know, a top hat and a coat and everything with the magic wand, and it looks like he's pretending to be like a magician. You know, while he's doing that, Wanda eventually rolls out this big giant wardrobe. It's a weird looking wardrobe. And then you find out what they're doing is they're practicing for a talent show. There's a talent show coming up, like a community talent show, and that's what they're practicing for. And they are like, I guess their performance that they're going to do is going to be like a magic show. In this magic show, Vision's stage name is Illusion, while Wanda's stage name is Glamour. I don't know if that has any significance or not, but that's the names they choose for their on-stage personas for this particular talent show. They're practicing the magic trick, and, you know, the wardrobe is where Wanda's supposed to go in, and he's supposed to make her disappear in the show. So to test it out, he opens up the door, and Wanda goes in, and he closes it, and he says abracadabra, and then when he opens up the door, Wanda is gone. And like right when he's thinking that, you know, this will work out, the next thing you know, you see the hidden door in the back of the wardrobe open, and Wanda walks out and she's clapping and she's like, yeah, that works good. So then Vision makes a comment about, you know, if you come out and they see that there's a door, isn't that going to ruin the effect? And Wanda kind of is like, well, that's the point. She was like, this is a magic performance, you know, real people, you know, to real people, magic is fake. So we have to make sure that they know that this is fake, because they don't, I guess her mindset is that they don't want, you know, everybody to know that they have powers, that she can really do real magic and Vision can really do different things. He got these different abilities. So I guess her mindset is that, you know, while they're going to do the tricks, they're still going to do it and have some kind of amateurish thing to it so they can see the workings of the trick after it's done, you know, just so they won't be tipped off to them actually having any type of magical skills. After they have that conversation, Wanda mentions that she has to go to a planning committee meeting. I guess it's some kind of meeting that the community is having. And Vision also says he has to go to a meeting too, a neighborhood watch meeting. So it looks like all of the women in the town has one meeting. That's the planning committee. And then like the neighborhood watch meeting is like all the men in the town. They talk about that for a second and then Vision leaves. Next, we have Wanda. She's in the house by herself and she comes out the kitchen and she's walking through the living room. And she's just doing little piddly stuff. She hears a noise outside, the same noise that she heard the night before. So she looks up, and it kind of startles her at first. And she looks up, and then she goes outside, and she's looking around outside, investigating, trying to find out where the noise is coming from. But then she looks over to a rose bush or some kind of flower bush that was in the yard. And as she looks in that bush, she sees something red in that bush, like in the middle of the little flower bed thing. And it's weird because this whole show is still in black and white. And then you have this one item that's in color, that's red. You know, it stands out from everything, that's sitting in the middle of the flower bed. And she kind of just notices it and looks at it. So she walks over to the flower bed, and as she gets closer and she looks at it, she realizes it's like a little toy helicopter. And she's kind of puzzled about, you know, what this is. So she reaches down and she picks up the helicopter, and she kind of holds it up and she looks at it. And then while you look at it, you notice that it has the same symbol on the helicopter that was on the notepad at the end of episode 1, you know, and then the number 57. So I'm not sure if that number 57 have any significance, but I think that symbol means something. And I think I figured out what that symbol is. So now you have Wanda, she's holding up the helicopter. She's kind of holding it like on its end, like she's kind of like it's something she don't really want to touch. And then while she's looking at it, look like she's trying to figure out what it is. So while she's holding it, Agnes shows up. She shows up and she says something and she startles Wanda. Wanda drops the helicopter and she turns around and look at Agnes. So Agnes is standing there and she says a few things, and then she holds up a rabbit in a cage. You know, and Wanda's looking at her like, why does she have a rabbit in the cage? Then that's when she reminds her that she brought the rabbit over. That's her pet rabbit, and she brought it over so that Wanda and Vision can use the rabbit in their magician show for the talent show. So Wanda's like, oh, okay, good. And she grabs the cage with the rabbit and takes the rabbit in the house. And she comes back out, and then Agnes and Wanda just walks down the street, and I guess they're going to the planning committee meeting. So they get a couple of houses down, but while they're on their way, Agnes starts explaining to her about Dottie. Now, Dottie, from what I understand, is the woman that's in charge of the planning committee, and I'm guessing she's one of the women that everybody in the town kind of wants to appease. She's like, Agnes makes a point of telling her that, if this go well for you, Dottie will be on your side, and you won't have anything to worry about, as far as anything else you want to do in this town. So while they're having this conversation, Dottie comes out. She's in the front, blonde-haired woman, and she got a group of other women following her. And I noticed that there's a black woman in that group, which is odd because up until this point, there hasn't been any black people in the show. There's a black woman in the group, and I could almost guess who this person is. At this point, I don't know who it is, but just knowing Marvel and knowing what's going on with all of the different series and stuff coming out, at this point, I'm guessing that's who this person is, but I'm not sure yet. And I'll get to that in a minute. Dottie comes out with her crew. They're all like following her. The next scene, I'm guessing it's in their backyard. They're like in this area. There's a pool, but then there's this like gazebo thing on the side of the pool, and that's where all the women are. They're sitting in all of these chairs, and they're surrounding like a little table and stuff. And Dottie's sitting in the front, and there's a woman giving like a little presentation, While this woman's giving a presentation, you notice that Dottie is somebody that's kind of hard to please. It's like she's like one of those people that have something to say about everybody. So they're talking, and then they get on the subject of the talent show. And while they're talking about the talent show, Dottie starts talking about how important this talent show was and that it is very important for the children. And then right when she says that, everybody in the group chants the words for the children. They all say it in unison. They all say it together. And I thought that was kind of odd. While this was going on, the person that was sitting beside Wanda, which was the black woman that I was talking about, she kind of introduces herself to Wanda. She's like, says something about how she didn't chant because she was scared to move, just kind of emphasizing how fearful a lot of those women are of Dottie. So Wanda kind of looks at the woman and she introduces herself to the woman. She's like, I'm Wanda, and she holds out her hand to shake her hand. So the woman kind of looks at Wanda and she hesitates for a minute and she says, nice to meet you, I'm Geraldine. And she kind of hesitates before she says it. Now, I was saying before that I think that the black woman that showed up with this group, I kind of figured out I knew who she was. But what kind of threw me off was that she introduced herself as Geraldine, but she also hesitated, which made me think she was lying. Now, the thing about this woman is I know that the actress that's playing this woman, her name is Tiana Paris. Now, Tiana Paris, I know, got cast to play Monica Rambeau. Now, Monica Rambeau, if you don't know, if you remember in the movie Captain Marvel, when she came back to the U.S. and she went to visit her friend, Captain Marvel did, and her friend had a daughter, which was a little girl, and she had like the little conversation with the girl. Now, that little girl is Monica Rambeau. Now, if you think about it, Captain Marvel took place in the 80s. So all of this stuff that's going on in WandaVision or in Avengers and all of this stuff, this took place years later. So Monica Rambeau, even though she was a child in that Captain Marvel movie, in present day, as far as present day in the MCU, in the Marvel universe, she's an adult, So this character, the actor, Tiana Paris, she got cast as Monica Rambeau, and I'm thinking that's who she is. I'm thinking when she told her name was Geraldine, she was lying. So if she was lying about her name being Geraldine, that means to me that she knows that this is a creation and she's there on purpose. Probably not her being there is probably not a creation of Wanda, but she's there, for a reason. As of right now, I'm thinking that this character that we're seeing on screen is Monica Rambeau, and she lied about her name. She just made up the name Geraldine for one reason or another. And we'll probably find out as the season goes on why this is going on like it is. Okay, so in the next scene, we're in the library, and you see a group of the men sitting around this large table, and Vision walks in. He walks in, he's trying to be a part of their meeting, and when he goes, it seems like they don't really want him to be a part of the meeting. He's like wanting to talk, and they're telling him things like he have to wait till there's something new to come up on the table before he can join in on the meeting and stuff. But he kind of like puts himself in there. He was like, okay, so when is there going to be the new thing? And he just kind of starts talking about security. He's worried about security security because he's worried about the noise and stuff that they heard the night before. So he's talking about the security and trying to find out what information is about what kind of security that they have in this town and all of this kind of stuff. But somehow they kind of changed the subject. And what they do is they're going around a table and people are telling like secrets that they know about people. And all of the secrets are not really secrets that matter, but they're all given like secrets like that. And, you know, from one by one, they're given like little secrets that kind of don't mean anything. The thing that I thought was funny was that Vision tried to get in the conversation. He's like, I know a secret. And they're like, oh yeah, what? And he was like, my secret is that many of y'all don't know this, but Norm is a communist. Now, Norm is somebody that's sitting right there at the table with them. And Norm kind of makes this surprised look and was like, what are you talking about? But I thought that was kind of funny because Vision, you know, he's actually an AI. He's a computer program. He's not really, you know, if he says something, I kind of think that what he's saying is true, you know, because I don't think he have like the capability of like joking around like on that level or making up something on that level to be funny. I'm believing that he says something because he know, and it makes me wonder, what is the deal with Norman? Is he somebody from some of the other Marvel stuff and I just don't recognize him or remember who he is? You know, the rest of the group, they kind of just laugh it off and everything, and they start saying, oh, we didn't know you were as funny as you are and all of this kind of stuff. You know, what he was saying kind of sound like he was telling something that was true. They all thought it was a joke, and they kind of like laughing at him, saying, okay, now we see he's more like us. He's one of the guys and everything. So they offer him some food, and because they got like some snacks and stuff on the table. Then that's when he says he doesn't eat. You know, and they're looking at him like, you know, what do you mean you don't eat? So then he realized that, you know, to fit in, he gotta do things that other people do. So he come up with an excuse. He was like, well, he don't eat in between meals, you know. So then another guy offered him a piece of gum, and he was like, okay, well, I'll take the piece of gum. So while he's chewing the gum, he says something else, and the guy that was sitting beside him, which is a black guy, the second black person that's in this episode, he says something like, you know, you're really funny, you know, I didn't know you were so funny, and he kind of like slaps Vision on the back. Now when he does that, Vision kind of swallows the gum. You know, he just meant to chew it, you know, but he kind of swallows the gum because of the slap on the back. And at this point, everything turned into like a cartoon animation. It was weird. It was like a cartoon animation, and it shows the gum going down his throat in like this cartoon image, and it goes down into his stomach, and in his stomach are these big cartoon old school looking gear type things, and the gum you can see gets all gummed up in the gears. And then after that, you know, it's just a brief second of the little cartoon animation, but then it goes back to real life, still in black and white, but real life, and you could tell it's bothering him. He's kind of like holding his stomach sort of like he's having indigestion, and you hear these noises like his stomach is making some kind of noises. You know, it just looked weird. It looked like that gum going in his stomach has kind of messed him up. So now it jumps back to the planning committee, you know, back to where Wanda is outside, you know, where they were having the meeting before. And the meeting is over, and it looks like it's just Wanda and Dottie out there now. And Wanda is out there doing the cleanup. It looked like Dottie dismissed everybody and kept Wanda behind, you know, to clean up the place. So Wanda's doing the cleanup, and, you know, because of all of the stuff that's going on, she kind of sensed that something between Dottie isn't right. So she tells Dottie, you know, she's like, I don't know what I did. I think we got off on the wrong foot, and I would like to do something to fix that. You know, she's, you know, trying to make things better and everything because, you know, Wanda wants to fit in. I don't know why, you know, this whole thing, I don't understand what's going on, why she wants to fit in, and what's the importance of all of this stuff. Wanda wants to fit in, so she asks her what can she do to make it better. Well, Dottie kind of looks at her, and Dottie doesn't like her. Dottie tells her, I've heard things about you and your husband. You know, I don't like you. I've heard things about you and your husband. So Wanda looks at her and she tells her, I don't mean anyone any harm, which is odd. Why would she say that? If she don't mean anyone any harm, what is it that she's doing that could possibly be construed as harm? Dottie looks at her and says, I don't believe you. But right then, the radio that was sitting on the table, it was playing music before, but it starts getting louder, you know, and Wanda and Dottie, they're both looking at the radio wondering what's going on. And then all of a sudden you hear a voice coming from the radio. The voice is like Wanda. And then you hear a song playing on the radio, and the song is like that song, you know, that song, the old school song is like, help me Wanda, help me Wanda. That song is playing and it's getting louder and louder. And Dottie looks surprised, and she looks at the radio And then she looks at Wanda and she's like, who is that? And Wanda looks back at Dottie, and then Dottie looks at Wanda again and is like, who are you? And then the phone on the radio comes in again. This time it's saying, Wanda, who is doing this to you, Wanda? It's saying that over again. So then the radio just starts smoking, and then it sparks up. And just then when it sparks up, I guess that startles Dottie, and Dottie's holding a glass in her hand, and then she crushes the glass, breaking it all into pieces. And it falls to the floor. But then after she crushed the glass, she opens her hand, and the palm of her hand is bleeding. But the blood is red. It's not in black and white like everything else on the screen. Everything else is black and white, but the blood is red. So Wanda just kind of just looks at it, and then the scene ends. Okay, now at this point, there's another commercial. If you remember in the first episode, they had like a commercial, which was odd. They just had like a weird commercial thrown in the middle of the episode. This time, the commercial starts and there's a man standing. He's wearing a suit and he's standing in front of a mirror. And then you hear the voiceover say, you are never fully dressed until you have your two most important things, your lady and your strucker. So come to find out, this is a commercial for a watch, and the brand of the watch is a strucker. And then, the screen goes to just a picture of the watch, and as the watch zooms in, you notice that it says strucker on the watch, but then you notice that on the bottom of the watch, you see the words Hydra, and then the Hydra symbol. And then the commercial ends with another voiceover that says, Strucker, he'll make time for you. Which I'm wondering if this is like if this is like a message or something. It all seems weird. And I'm kind of thinking that all of these things that seem out of place, that seem weird, I think they all have a meaning. They all have something that there's a reason why those things are there. And as the season go on, we'll probably start figuring those things out, But I think right now we're getting a lot of setup. So now we're at the talent show. And then you get to backstage, and then you have Geraldine looking through a curtain. And Wanda's just standing there. She looks nervous, and she have on her little outfit for the show. Vision hasn't showed up yet, and Wanda's just like pacing back and forth. She's wondering where he is. All of a sudden he shows up, and he just looks drunk. He's stumbling over, he's walking all crazy, falling and everything, and he's just acting like a person that was like super drunk. And then when he gets there, he starts talking to her, and he's slurring his words and everything. Now Wanda, the first thing she tries to do is she's trying to tell him about the strange things that happen, of course with the radio, and then of course with the helicopter, but Vision is he's just so drunk that he's not paying attention. And at that point, that's when Wanda notices something isn't right with Vision, but she don't have time to do anything about it because, they're like, you're on stage now, you got to go out there and do your show. So Wanda goes out to the front, she's out there by herself, and then she kind of like introduces Vision, and it takes him a while to come. At first, he doesn't come out when she introduces him, and then finally he comes out, and he's still like acting all drunk, stumbling over his words and everything. So the magic show starts, and Vision is doing these things, but he's just doing tricks using his own abilities, like not using the stuff that they had planned. He's just using his own abilities. And like, for example, the first thing he does is that he levitates. He can't, Vision can fly anyway, so he just kind of levitates, and next the whole crowd is looking at him like, how's he doing that? Then Wanda looks at him and like, what is he doing? So she kind of like waves her hand and make like this pulley system appear, so it make it look like he was actually being lifted by a rope and pulleys. And then that of course made the crowd be like, oh, okay, that's how he did it, So this keeps happening. He does it about 2 or 3 more times where he keeps doing something else and using his own ability, and then Wanda have to use her powers to make some kind of reasoning for how this was done, so because she's trying to keep everybody in the town from knowing that they have abilities, that they have powers and stuff. So this goes on. He does it about 3 different tricks, and then finally the show ends. The show ends with he makes a mistake and he doesn't put Wanda in the wardrobe. So what Wanda does is she end up teleporting Monica Rambeau inside the wardrobe. So when they opened up the door, she's in there. Now she's wondering, how did she get there? So after the show is over, they get through the show, and after it's over, Wanda gets backstage with Vision, and then Vision is still acting funny. So then Wanda just uses her powers to kind of like scan Vision's body. And when she does that, it goes back to like the cartoon animation, and you can see the gum just clogging up the little gears in his stomach. So Wanda uses her power to remove the gum from the gears, and then, make the gum come back up, and then Vision pulls the gum out of his mouth, and then he kind of gets back to normal. So once they get that straight, they decided they better sneak out of here because they feel like they did horrible, that they made a mess of their show, and they didn't want to hear it from Dottie or anybody else. So they decided that they were just going to sneak out of there and go home. So while they're sneaking out, going out this little side exit, Dottie sees them and calls them over. So when she calls them over, they're thinking they're going to hear it, like they're going to get scolded or something. But Dottie actually loved their competition, loved it so much that she actually pulled them up on the stage and gave them a trophy for like the best comedy performance of the year, of the talent show, so they enjoyed it. And then the whole crowd, everybody kind of laughed and clapped and everything. Everybody enjoyed their show, So in the next scene, Wanda and Vision, they arrive at home. They come through the front door, and now Vision is back looking like Vision again. He doesn't have on his regular male face persona anymore. He's back looking like Vision, with the Vision face. And they're both celebrating. They're happy that they, ended up doing well at the talent show. They got the trophy in their hand. They put the trophy down. And they're just talking about how much fun they had. And then in unison, they both said, and it was all for the children, which we heard that phrase earlier in the show. And, when I heard it the first time, I thought it was weird because it was kind of like a chant, So then next, Wanda, they're sitting on the couch. And then next, Wanda said, I think the children might need some popcorn. So then she stands up to go and what I'm guessing is to make some popcorn. But as she walks in front of Vision, Vision notices something and stops her. And then when she stops her, she turns to face him, and then you find out she's pregnant. I'm like, what in the world? But she's pregnant. She got like a baby bump, and Vision looks at it, and then he stands up and he looks at her, and he kind of is like, is this really happening? And well, she asked him, is this really happening? And then he's like, yes. But then he kisses her. And while he kisses her, well, just when he's about to kiss her, there's this loud noise again. The same noise that they've been hearing throughout the whole show. This time when they hear the noise, Vision gets frustrated. He's like, I'm going to put a stop to this. And he turns back to his human face, and he goes outside, runs out the front door, Wanda following him. And then they get out to like the sidewalk in front of the front door. And when they're getting out there, they're looking. And then while they're there, you hear this noise, but it's a different noise than what you've been hearing through this whole show. And they look over, and then you see like a manhole cover in the middle of the street, like moving around. And that's what's making this new noise. The manhole cover gets lifted up, and they're just watching it. And then while they're watching it, this hand comes out the manhole cover, and then this man climbs out. And Wanda and Vision is just looking at him. And this man has on like what looks like a beekeeper outfit, the whole outfit with the veil over his face and everything. And you hear sounds of bees. So once he climbs out the manhole, he stands there and he has his back turned to Wanda and Vision, and on his back you can see that same emblem again, that same emblem with the sword in the middle of it, just on his back. So the man stands there for a second, and then he turns his face, and once he faces Wanda and look at Wanda just calmly, she just sits there and she just calmly says no. And right when she says that, time starts rewinding. Everything goes back. They go back in the house. Everything rewinds, and they got like a weird VHS rewind graphic on the screen. Rewind, and it goes back to the point where Vision first stood and saw that Wanda was pregnant and was to go to kiss her. But this time he does kiss her, and there is no noise. And when he kisses her and then stops, next you know, Wanda looks at Vision, and Vision's head has color in it. Now his head, instead of the black and white color, his face and head and everything is that green and like burgundy color that you normally used to seeing. And Wanda's looking at him and is like, she's shocked, wondering why is his head in color. So when she does that, she starts kind of like turning around, looking around the room, and as she turns and as she look around the room, the whole room and everything is changing from black and white to color as she turns. And then once she makes one complete circle, the whole environment, everything is changed from black and white to color. Everything is now in color. So they're sitting there, everything is in color now. It's not in black and white anymore, which I'm glad. I'm guessing the next episode is going to be in color. Now they need to get the screen, the screen size back to widescreen so I can get used to looking at it. like I normally look at everything else. But everything is in color now. So then, of course, just like the last episode, how the last episode ended, they kissed. And then as they kissed, the screen went through the ending transition that you normally see in like those old school shows when they close. And then at the end, when the transition finishes, the words "the end" show up on the screen. But then you hear that voice again, the same voice from the radio. And the voice says, "Wanda, who's doing this to you, Wanda?" And then the episode ends and the credits roll. Now this episode, I watched this episode twice. The first time I watched the episode, when I was finished, I had the same kind of feeling as I had with episode 1. I was like, what is this? I don't know if I'm going to watch this whole season. That's what I was thinking. But when I watched it the second time, that was when I was taking notes. So when I was watching the second time, that was when I was paying a little more attention to stuff. And that's when I noticed all of these things is getting sprinkled throughout the episode. It's like it's just slowly bringing more and more stuff into the episode, and it really had me interested. I'm not sure if I'm at the point yet where I'm hooked, but I can see that they're building to that point. So, okay, I'm thinking one of two things is going on. I'm thinking that Wanda is either, because if you remember, Wanda was in love with Vision, and Vision was killed in Infinity War. So I'm thinking Wanda is kind of in mourning because of the death of Vision. She had like a strong attachment to him. And I'm thinking she's kind of in mourning. She might be kind of losing her mind a little bit. And, her powers are kind of like the type of powers where she can create realities and stuff like that. And they'll be real. Even though she create them with her powers and magic and stuff, they can be real. And I'm thinking this whole environment is something that she has created. And I'm thinking that like Monica Rambeau, she's saying that she's Geraldine, but I'm thinking that she is somehow there trying to help Wanda, trying to find out, what's going on, why is she doing. I think she's there and she's kind of like undercover. And that Doctor Strange is supposed to be in this show, and I'm thinking Doctor Strange is somehow the person that is using his magic to allow Monica Rambeau to be inserted into this dimension to try to find out what's going on. That's one of the things I think is going on. Now, the other thing I think could be going on is that Wanda is somewhere kind of being held against her will. And this whole world is being created because she is being forced to do it. She's under some type of influence from someone that is causing her to create this. Not sure why they're causing her to create this, or maybe she's creating this as some sort of defense mechanism. But I think that the second reason that the thing that could be happening is that she's somewhere being held against her will, and she's kind of being forced to do all of this stuff that's going on. When it comes to that part, I still think that, I know Doctor Strange is going to be on this series at some point, but I'm thinking that maybe he is still the reason why Monica Rambeau is there. I'm thinking Monica Rambeau is there to try to help her, to try to find out what's going on, try to break her out of whatever spell or whatever thing that she's in, which all of this stuff is being created by her. So, they're trying to figure out what she's doing, trying to make her snap out of whatever it is she's doing. So that's where I'm at now. That's what I think is happening. And if that's true, that's enough to make me continue watching, to wonder what's going to go on, because that's pretty interesting. Sorry, I bumped the camera. But that's pretty interesting, but that's what I think is going on. One of those two things, which is pretty much two sides of the same coin. But that's where we are. That was episode 2. And, I enjoyed this. After the second watch of episode 2, I kind of enjoyed this a little bit more than the first episode. The first episode I was kind of iffy on, but this episode I kind of feel a little bit better about. I'm still not completely sold on the series, but I'm getting there a little bit. If it's going in a direction that I think it's going to go, it's going to eventually sell me for sure. But if it's not, I don't know. That's where I am right now, and that was episode 2 of WandaVision, and I'm glad you watched. And I'll see you next time. You made it to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. While you're here, why don't you check out that video right there? Or maybe that one right there. And, while you're at it, go ahead and click my image in the middle there and subscribe to this channel.